Hi everyone, and welcome to another Scriptcase tutorial. Today we're going to be starting the first of a three-part series on setting up a point-of-sale system with Scriptcase. So I hope this series is helpful for you, and as you see on the screen here, I have a demo of the final product. So this is what we're going to be building, and we'll walk through this step by step, but before we get into the nuts and bolts of how to do this, I first wanted to walk you through this final product demo so you can see what our end goal is here. So as you can see, I have a menu application here. So up here at the top are all the menu buttons here to our different areas of the application. And then down in the bottom, we just have a blank application here with an image loaded, so it just kind of looks nice. And we'll get into how that's done in a later video. But for now, let's look at these menu options. So if you see, our first one here is a maintenance option. This is kind of the system setup. So this is how we configure our products, our providers, our category states, various things, kind of configure the back end of the system so that the front end, all the sales and cart and all that can be set up to work properly. So let's just go through these applications one by one and I'll show you how they work. So we first have our products. This is kind of our big one. So these are all the products that we sell in our imaginary company that uses this system. So you can kind of see it's just a pretty basic table. We've got an image of the product, the name, the state of it, the barcode here. We'll look at how that's created, cost, price, all that information, and then how much is in stock. We've also got some stuff here so we can show the inactive products or just the active products as well. And then if we click here on the edit button, we've got a form associated with this. So here we have an image. We can change that image if we want. We can edit the name, the code, the category, and we'll look at how these are populated in a second. The state, price, cost, the date, all that information as well. Or we could add a new record here, so we could add a new product like that. So that's the products applications. Let's look now at the categories. So these are the different categories here you saw that our products are organized into. So now let's look at the applications used to manage this categories item here. So these are the different categories that the products can be organized into. So perhaps we want to add a new category for our products to be organized into, or maybe edit one of the names of the existing categories. To do that, we can go to the category application here. And this is an editable grid form. So I don't have to go to a separate form to edit this. I can just click the edit button right here on the grid and change this. This is really convenient since there's really only one piece of data that we're changing here. We're only changing this category name. Nothing else is being changed in this. So we could edit this, or we could click add new and it creates a new row here. And then we can just do a test category like this and go ahead and add that in. And so now we have a new category. So if we went back and reloaded this form, so let me go ahead and reload this. So click add new again. We see that new category that we just added there. And we'll look at how this drop down is populated in a second when we get to how to develop this. But that's how that works. So now let's look at the state. So we've got these states here, active, inactive, or eliminated. So these are set up in much the same way. Let's go up here to our maintenance menu and go to our states option here. And this is also an editable grid. We can also delete these, or we can just click edit. We could edit this one, or we could add a new one like so. And let's go ahead and follow the same procedures that we did with the last one. Add a new one here, and let's go back and reload our categories here. And here we have our new state that we can use right there. So that's how the states and the products work. So let's go ahead and look at one other item on our maintenance menu, and that is the providers right here. So these are associated with a cart. We'll look at a little bit more of how those work in a second. But these are just some contact information, a name, address, phone, email, all that. So this is a basic grid we have set up here. And again, we can click the edit button, which takes us to a form, and we can edit all that information there. So now that we have the back end of the system understood and how it works, let's go ahead and look at some of the other options, the actual point of sale functions for this. So let's look at the sales interface first. So let's click on sales right here. And again, that opens up in another tab. And so it's letting us create a new sale. So this is the ID of the last sale and the date of the last sale. So some information for us there. And then a little icon there to show us what we're doing. So we just need to generate a new sale. So this is going to create a new sale. And it's already put the date in there of our current date and time, and the total amount, which is not yet created. And then also the state of the sale. So perhaps this is an inactive sale. Perhaps we'll activate it later, or it's an active sale. Over here, we have our products, which we can add to this sale. And then over here, we'll have where we can actually finish the sale and make the payment. So let's go ahead and let's add some products. So we have here, we can filter the products by type here. That's that type category that we set up on the back end. Or we can look through all of them. We can also search for them right here. So we could type in a name like this and search for it. And there it found our camera product right there. So let's find now that we found that, let's go ahead and add this to the sale. And we see it already repopulated this over here with our kind of running total of everything that we have added here. And if we wanted to increase the quantity, we could click the addition button here. Or if we wanted to decrease it, we could hit the subtraction button here. Or we could simply throw this item away with the trash can icon here. Let's say we're all done. This is the only thing we wanted to buy, and we only wanted to buy one. Then we need to go ahead and pay for this. So let's go ahead and click this button down here to pay. So we click on that. And here we have another little window popped up to pay for this. So first we need to select our type of payment. We can do cash. And if cash, then we need to put in the amount that was actually paid. So usually when you pay with cash, you don't have exact change. And this is $205. So maybe they paid with a different amount. So you put in the amount and then it'll tell you the change that is due back. Or you can do just a card or check, in which case your payment is for the exact amount. Let's go back to cash and let's put in a different amount. So maybe we had two $100 bills and a $20 bill. So we paid with $220. Click OK. And it's going to pull up a receipt right here. And that's quite small. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is meant to be printed out as a receipt. But here we have our receipt. And it says, thank you for your purchase and the total amount. But if we go back here, we also have a message here that says the change was $15. So then the clerk could get $15 out of the cash register and give that back to the customer. So that's how the sales part of this works. Okay, so now let's look at the final piece of this point of sale system. So this is a cart. So this is for maybe an outside organization that's selling your products. And so they're going to sell this. So the provider of that is, for this one, Smith Electronics. So that's our provider that we set up in the back end. And we set up the date of this sale. And then we can go ahead and add this as a cart record. Then we need to add the items to this cart. So the individual products that are going to be added. So we're going to click Add New. We can add which product they sold and then what the cost of that was. So maybe there was some sort of a discount applied since this is maybe selling in bulk. So we could sell them for maybe $100 because they're going to buy 600 of them. So that's the quantity, and it automatically calculates the total amount for that. So that's $60,000. So the big sale of iPhones there. So then we can add that to the cart and hit save on our cart. And so that's all saved in there for us to access later. So that's basically a demo of how this point of sale system works. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts of how to build this actually. So this is going to be a 3-part series, as I mentioned before. And in this video, we're just going to be looking at the maintenance applications here. So these 4 items here on the menu, we're going to be building that. And then in the next one, we'll look at the sales. And then after that, the cart. And then putting it all together in that 3rd video inside of this menu, and how that would work. So let's go ahead and get started in our Scriptcase development environment. Okay, so here we are in our Scriptcase environment. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you the database. So this database is already set up. So I'm just going to show you that and show you some of the data so that you know how this is set up. So in our development environment here, we're going to go up to Database, Database Builder. We're going to choose our connection here. And here is our database structure. So we have these different tables here, our cart, category, detail cart, detail sales, products, providers, sales, and states. So these you probably already recognize from the different applications we've used. And we're focusing on the maintenance applications this time. So now let's look at this in another way. Let's go to database and let's go to our ER diagram. And this is going to show us how these tables are related and as well show us a little bit of the structure. So we're going to choose our connection again. Okay, so this is our ER diagram. Let me scroll down here so you can see a little bit. I'm going to reorganize this a little bit. So we've got this up here, states, carts, detail cart, and provider like this, and our products up here. So here we can see how our different tables are related. And we're going to be looking at just the ones for the maintenance. So we can look at provider, and we can see a line going from provider to cart right here with this provider ID in cart. So this ID here in provider lines up with the provider ID in the cart. So that's how that's connected. And then we can go to our products table. And our products table is related to several other tables, as you remember. We have our state over here. So those are the states that the product can take. We also have our category table up here. Let me move that up so you can see it better. So that's the different categories that our products can be organized into. And then it also links to the detail cart because we can add products to the line items in our cart. So those are the tables that we need for our maintenance backend to the system. We'll look at some of the other tables and how this database works in a second. But for now, that should be enough. Let's get started with building these. So I'm going to close this up and go back to home here. And our products applications are the most complicated. So we're going to save them to later. And we're going to do our three most simple applications. So that's going to be the provider, the category, and the state applications. And we can do all of those at the same time, actually, and get most of it out of the way at the same time using our batch application creation. So we're going to go up here to application like this, and we're going to go to batch applications here. Okay, so now we need to choose our connection and then the tables we want. So we're going to do category, we're going to do provider, and we're going to do states. And we don't want a form and grid for all of these. We only want a form and a grid for our provider because a provider has, more info. If you remember, it had the name and the address and contact information. But the category and the states only had one piece of information, only one field that we needed to edit. So we really only need a form for that. We don't need a grid, and we'll make it an editable form like we saw. So let's uncheck the grid for category and state, but leave it checked for provider. Now let's click next. Okay, so we've got all our different applications that we're going to use here, and we need to change the type for category and state forms to an editable grid. So we're going to change this to editable grid, and we're going to do editable grid view. And we'll be able to see in a minute what that looks like. And we're going to do the same for states. So now let's click finish on this. Okay, so here are the applications we just created, and they're not generated at all yet, but they're pretty much set up. So now let's go ahead and let's edit these one by one and make sure the fields are all set up in the correct way. But mostly they're set up because we did the batch editing like that. So let's start right here at the top with category. So this is an editable grid view like we saw. So this is going to make it so that they can view the rows, but then have to click the edit button to actually edit them. So that makes it a little bit safer so that they don't accidentally edit records. And let's go to edit fields here. And let's take the ID off. The ID is an auto increment field in the database, and it's used just on the back end, so it can be completely transparent to the user because it'll be handled by the database. So all we need is the category field. So let's go ahead and hit save on that. And that's really all we need to do right now for this. So let's go ahead and run it and see what it looks like. Okay, so here it is, and it's already looking at our database with all the data already in it. So it looks much like we saw before, and that was pretty simple. We can edit it. We can add a new record. So that was really simple and easy to do. Let's go ahead and do another application. So let's go back to home here and let's choose provider. So that's the next one on the list. So provider is a little more complicated with the UI and everything. Let's go to edit fields here. Let's take the ID off again, since that is transparent to the user. And then all these other fields can be left like so. I'm going to change some of the labels. So change PH, the phone number, and then those should be set up as is. Let's go ahead and run this. We're going to make one more change to the UI, but let's make sure it looks all right. So let's go ahead and click run. Okay, so this could work as is, but I want to make it look a little bit nicer. I want to make it look so that 3 of these fields are over here on the left and 3 of these fields are over here on the right. So to do that, we need to set up columns inside of this form. So let's go ahead and go back here. We need to go to Layout, Blocks, choose the block for this and click Edit on it. Choose this block, this is our only block, and set the columns to 2. So now let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Okay, so now we have it set up in 2 different columns. So this makes it a little bit nicer to edit so we can move left to right. Lastly, we need to change just a couple things. So we need to set this to a little bit larger area so that they can put multiple lines in, because typically you'd see an address in a multiple line format like that. So let's go back here to Fields and to the address field here. And we're going to change this from text to multiple lines here. So that's right here, multiple lines text, like so. And let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so that's a little bit better. So now we can edit this data to look a little bit more like we'd see in an actual address like so. So there we go. That looks more realistic. Let's go ahead and save that. And we also want to make this an email field so that it authenticates it as a valid email address. So it needs that @ symbol in there followed by a URL. So let's go ahead and go back here to the email field. Change this to an email type right here. So that way, if they don't type in a valid email format, it won't accept it. So if I try to change this to just some random text that's not valid, it's going to show us that it's invalid data. So let me put that back in there, and now it's all good to go. Okay, so that's how the provider form works, and we'll look at the grid in just a little bit. But let's go back here and edit another form. So our next form is our states form. So this is going to be pretty simple like the category here. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. We're going to go to edit fields like this. I'm going to take the ID off and leave everything else as is. So this is an editable grid. Let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Okay. So here we have, it's all set up. It's got our data that we had before, even our new record that we added in the demo. We can edit these, or we can add a new row just like on category. So that's pretty easy and easy to set up. So now let's go back and look at our final application that we haven't finished setting up yet. And that is the grid for the provider. Okay. So we've got that opened up. Let's go to edit fields and decide which fields we want to be put on there. We want everything but the ID. So same as before, we can take the ID off. No reason to put that on there. Let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Okay, so here it is. Pretty simple grid. Nothing all that complicated. All we needed to do was take that ID off, and it's got all the fields here, all set up and ready to go. So that's all we need to do with that. All right, so those are the 4 applications for maintenance that are simple. Next, we need to do products. Products is a little bit more complicated, so we're going to do that on its own. Let's go back to our batch applications here. We're going to create both the grid and the form. So let's choose our products table here. We want both the form and grid. Let's go ahead and click next. The name is good. We want a single row. Everything is good and set up. Let's click the to edit button so it'll automatically open these for editing when we click finish. So we're going to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our grid. So our grid is fairly simple. Let's choose the fields that we want on screen. So we're going to put everything on here except the ID again. So let me drag this off. Let's put some other items on here. The image, let's reorder it a little bit. So we're going to have the code, the name, the code. Let's put the date up here, the price, cost, and quantity here. And then let's leave the image on the end and the state and the categories on the end as well. Let's go ahead and hit save on this. Now, if I were to run this image would be quite large, and we don't want it quite that large. So let's go ahead and click edit on this. So we're going to edit this field, and we're going to set the dimensions for that. So that's the height and the width. Let's make it 50 by 50. That should be a good width for this. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like for now. We still got some work to do on this, but it's always good to kind of check in and see where you are in terms of the final product. Okay, so that looks not too bad here. We've got our image. We've got these different fields all set up and on screen. Now let's do a little bit more. So this state ID and category ID is what's saved in the database. And it's good for the database because it can connect it very easily to the state and category tables. But to the user, to the end user, that isn't very useful. We want the actual description associated with that. So instead of 2, we would want it to say inactive, or instead of 1, we want it to say active. And for the category, we want it to be office equipment or electronics here. So let's go ahead and make these lookup fields that can look in the database and pull the descriptive value out. So let's go back here. Let's edit the state field first. And we are going to change the lookup method from none to automatic. So this is where we need to enter an SQL query here to look at that other table, to look at the state table and pull the description out for the ID that's saved in this record. But you really don't need to know a lot about SQL to do this. You can automatically create it here. Let's click Create Select. Choose the state table here. The key field, that's what's actually saved in the database, is going to be the ID. And then the field that's shown on screen is the state field. So that's the descriptive field for that state. Let's hit save on that. And it automatically populated it here with this SQL. Okay, so that's set up. Let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to do the same thing for category. So let's go to that field, change it to automatic lookup, click Create Select. This time we're going to choose the category table. The key field is still the ID, and the field that's shown is the category field right here. Let's hit save on that. It populated it with the SQL. Now that it's not showing the ID, we can go back to Edit Fields and change this to State and Category, like so. Let's run this and make sure this looks nice. Okay, and it's reloading here. And here we have our state and category fields with the descriptive values in them. So that looks very nice. Now there's one more field that you might have remembered from the demo that was on this grid, and that was the barcode. So that was something that you could scan perhaps. We need to generate that barcode on the fly instead of saving it in the database. Scriptcase provides a really nice way to generate barcodes from any bit of data. So let's go back here. We're going to add a field. So this is a field that's not in the table, but is going to be displayed on screen. So we're going to Fields, New Field here. We're going to add one new field. This is going to be a barcode field. So we're going to choose for the type, barcode. We're going to name it barcode. And the label will be barcode as well. Let's click Create on that. Okay, so for the output, we can leave it to PNG, and we're going to make it code 128 as a type. You might want to change it to a different barcode depending on your needs. And some of these settings can be edited too if we want, and then we can generate a test one here. But that'll set it up so we just need to feed it some data now. So let's hit save on this. And we need to feed this some data. And once we give it that data, it'll automatically generate the barcode for every row. So to do that, we need to do a little bit of programming. We're going to give it the code field. So whatever data is in that code field, we're going to feed it to this barcode, and it'll generate a barcode with that code. So when it's scanned, it'll read it as that code. So to do that, we need to go to Events, and we need to go to On Record here. So this will be called every time a record loads. And we need to set the barcode field. We're going to use the curly braces here, which is accessing that field. That's the Scriptcase field variable. We're going to set that equal to whatever is in the code field, like so. So that's assigning the value from code to barcode, which Scriptcase will then automatically use to generate a barcode. So let's hit save on that. And then let's go ahead and run this, and we should have a barcode on screen. Okay, and there we have our barcodes with the little codes underneath them, and they line up with these codes right here. So if we were to scan this with a barcode reader, it would automatically pull up that code as the data. So we're almost done with this. This is pretty close to being done. Lastly, we need to add a refine to search here on the left so that we can refine these results by category or state. So let's go back here and let's go down here on the left menu to refine to search. Let's click settings. That's all set up. Let's go ahead to select fields. And we want it to organize by state and category. Let's hit save on that. And if we wanted to change the order which these appear on the screen, we can go to edit fields and drag them up and down. But let's hit save on that. And then let's go ahead and run this application. This should be all finalized, but let's go ahead and look and see how it is before we sign off on it. Okay, so now we've got our refined search. We've got categories, so we can click here. So it's just going to show us the products in the computer category. If we decide we want to get rid of that, we can just click the X here. And it will show us everything again. And then the state also will show us the inactive records or just the active records. We could also do a multi-select. So we could do both active and inactive and then limit this to just computers and hit apply on this like so. So we can do a multi-select in that way. Okay, so that's the grid for products. Now let's get to the form for products. So let's go back here. We've got a grid open here and our form is already open. So let's get started with this. This is a single view, single record application. I'm going to click on edit fields. And let's take the ID off just like before. And let's change the order of these fields too. Let's put the date up here. Price, cost, quantity. This is just like the grid. And then state and category right there like before. So let's check in on this and let's see what it looks like. So we're going to run this. Okay, so here it is. And this could work as is. But we're going to make some changes to this to make this a little bit nicer. Let's get working on the UI first. So we want this image to be put over here on the right. You might remember we did that in the demo. And that'll make it look a little bit nicer. So let's go over here. We're going to do that with a new block. So we're going to go to Layouts, Blocks here. We're going to create a new block. We're going to name it Image Block, like so. And we don't need to worry about the label since we're not going to show it. Okay, and then we need to tell the previous block, so our main block, where the next block is going to be positioned in relation to it. So it's going to be next to it. So here in our main block, we have our next option here. We're going to make sure it's set to beside, like that. Let's hit save on this. And then let's put our image field in our image block. So we're going to go to edit fields and drag our image field down into that image block. So let's go ahead and run this. Wait for it to generate the code and load here. All right, so now our image block is over here on the left with our image. So that's all set up. Now let's do the same thing we did on the grid and make the state and category to be lookups with this drop down, since the numbers are not all that useful to our users. So let's click the edit on state. And as you can see, it's already a select because Scriptcase has already seen from the way we set up our database that those two tables, the state table and the products table, are related using the state ID. However, it's only showing the ID on screen. So let's go ahead and edit this lookup statement here. Let's do a create select, just like we saw before. We're going to choose the state table here. The key field, so the field that's going to be saved to the database, is still the ID. But the field that's shown on screen is the state, just like on the grid. So there we go. Let's hit save on that. And then for category, we're going to do the same thing. It's already recognized the database structure. So we just need to tell which field to put on screen. The ID field is the key field, and the category field is shown on screen. Hit the check mark, and then that should be all set up. So let's go ahead and run this and see what it looks like. Alright, so here it is all loaded, and this is pretty much all set up and ready to use. So we've got our state drop down here with all of our different states, and our category drop down. So the UI set up, the functionality of this is set up, and so that's everything we need for the maintenance section, the back-end section of our point of sale system. So I hope this is helpful for you, and I hope you stick around for the next video where we'll set up the sales system, the sales side of this for the point of sale system.